In an NFL that constantly seems to get smaller, faster and more pass-centric, the Atlanta Falcons have given us the feel of being back in the 1990s, with some modern elements sprinkled in, with 3 straight draft picks inside the top 10 being spent on the skill position group. They've now added the pieces to take advantage of the opportunities head coach Arthur Smith and offensive coordinator Dave Ragone present, and this is a chance to be a special offense heading into year 3 under that regime in the ATL. Here are the 3 pillars in the Falcons' ascent to what I believe could be one of the toughest attacks to game plan for in 2023. First, we've got the diverse, relentless run game that they want to hit you with. Second is the growth of quarterback and the expansion of the pass game altogether. And finally, the most abstract point among these, alignment agnostic personnel. I'll try to go into depth about each of those points, and we start with the ways they can attack defenses on the ground. The Falcons led the league with 559 rush attempts last season and finished just 2 yards short of the Ravens for second in yards on the ground, despite a 5th round rookie easily leading them in carries, along with an undrafted free agent and a 5th round pick at defensive back formerly, combining for nearly 100 additional rush attempts. Even more impressive for them is despite that volume and having either multiple tight ends or running backs on the field for about 65% of snaps last season, meaning defenses needed to match with the according personnel, and they played to run first. The Falcons were actually the only team in the NFL to run it more than they throw it on first down, coming in at a 51 to 49% rate, and running backs carried the ball against 8+ defenders in the box on 17.2% of their attempts. According to Pro Football Focus, Atlanta led the league with a 58% rate of outside zone, which I think is a smidge higher than what it really was, since a lot of the split zone stuff looks the same to the untrained eye, without wanting to take too big a shot here PFF, but if they won't respond to my questions about the numbers they list, I feel like I should at least mention it here. But yeah, a heavy focus on stretching defenses horizontally that way, since they have the fullback on the field for nearly 26% of snaps, and a lot of times they'll be in 2 tight end sets and put one of those guys on the move. There's plenty of lead zone where the aiming points are a little further inside, then the split action or to create cutback opportunities once they get defenses to flow over aggressively. Orbit and jet motion are very prominent for them, so you'll see them actually get those guys the ball on the move to some degree, so defenses have to respect it. With as many condensed formations and receivers in reduced splits, they want to get out to the edge with cracked toss plays, and then with a couple of mobile quarterbacks, they also use zone reads and what I personally call veer, where the back executes the dive action, at times with the puller working up to the place at linebacker, whilst the quarterback decides if he pulls or gives depending on the readman on the edge. I'll show you some examples of all of these in a minute, but let's quickly take a look at the offensive line from 2022. The tackle duo has been the same for the last 4 years, with Jake Matthews being a top 10 pick 9 years ago by now already, and Caleb McGarry going at the back end of round 1 in 2019. Matthews has been a slightly above average starter for nearly a decade by now, while the latter certainly didn't play up to that level early on in his career, but Arthur Smith has really weaponized him by using his blocking skills in space and limiting the amount of true dropbacks, which is where he struggled in the past. Chris Lindstrom at right guard is the crown jewel of this group, to me already one of the top 2 guards in the NFL, along with the Cowboys' Zach Martin, after getting picked 14th overall in that same draft with McGarry. Provides tremendous lateral displacement as part of their zone run game, and allowed just 9 total pressures and over 500 pass blocking snaps last season. A 4th round pick from 2021 and Drew Dahlman replaced Matt Hennessy at center last season in year 2 as a pro, and he's added a more stable presence at the pivot. Not only that, but while Hennessy profiled as a great fit in a wide zone-based system due to his athleticism, Dahlman's combination of more functional play strength and movement skills have helped diversify his run game portfolio. The question mark will be at left guard, where probably the worst starter they had in Elijah Wilkinson has now moved on to Chicago, and now they insert the 38th overall pick Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse, who they traded up for specifically into that spot. And while his hand placement could use some improvement in order to transfer power from the ground up optimally, he's agile to get to a place at edge of defenders and rolls his hip through contact effectively. Let's now get to the film though. We start in week 3 at Seattle, where they won 27-23, averaging 5.8 yards per rush and 11.5 yards per pass, with a lot of those opportunities created off play action. So like I said, the base concept they like to build off is the outside zone, which they run out of an ace duo set here with 2 tight ends to the right, and they call towards that strong side. They beautifully make sure to secure the corner for Cordell Patterson, who can accelerate through this curvilinear movement to bend it up the field for an easy 18 yards. Let's watch it again from the endzone angle to see what's really going on here. The defense is already at a disadvantage due to matching with nickel personnel, but they drop the field at safety down to present a 4-3 overlook with a free technique towards the strong side, and then this shade nose actually had the 2 eyes, so at the inside shade of the guard on the backside, and the nickel's now responsible for contain. Meanwhile, everybody in the Falcons is basically responsible for the gap towards the play side here, where they aim to get to the outside edge of their defender to ultimately get the running back out to the corner. If the gap is uncovered, they continue on a similar angle as they climb up to the second level, and if they can't actually pin those bodies inside, they just use the momentum of those guys against them, and now the ball carrier reads what's going on, cutting inside of those blocks when needed. Watch everybody take that initial bucket step, giving ground vertically in order to be able to open the hips and gain ground laterally. They work in perfect unity for where help run towards the backside gap is enough, when to peel off combos on the front side and get everybody else covered up in order to get Patterson out to the corner here and use that speed for him. The very play before that, Atlanta was in this condensed set from 22 personnel by definition, but Pitts is the wideout at the top of the screen, and you have Avery Williams, a running back, as the offset receiver in the stack, who they motion across as a fly sweep threat in order to run zone towards that weak set now, which the motion man just came from. But as we get to the end zone angle and check what's going on, here the defensive line aggressively tries to shoot up the field, and the movement by the offensive line converts into more lateral displacement, as if they're running inside zone actually. This backside outside linebacker, Uchenna Nwosu, has to stay home whilst the rest of the defense flows with the play in order to take care of the quarterback potentially pulling the ball. And as everybody tries to fly towards the play side, this is what opens up that massive cutback lane now for Cordarrelle Patterson, worth 40 yards before it gets pushed out of bounds. Here's an example of split zone from week 10 at Carolina, where the Falcons had 11 personnel from shotgun with this tight bunch at the top, where they orbit motion the offset Z receiver across and run towards his initial alignment, with Kyle Pitts at the wing spot sifting across the formation and being responsible for kicking out the endman on the backside. Once again, I'll show you the other angle so you can see more clearly and draw up the actual running scheme. As you can see here in a second, the initial steps and the angles the O-line take here aren't as conservative in order to reach or scoop block defenders, but rather they're trying to create that flow in order to open up a lane for the back to cut it up behind. And with the defense once again being this overlook, where the backside linebacker has to fill the B gap, right tackle Caleb McGarry walls him off that way, presenting his back to running back Caleb Huntley, who cuts it up back there, whilst Pitts recognizes the end is actually too wide here anyway, as he's probably worried about the quarterback potentially pulling the ball, in order to become a lead blocker here basically on this 15-yard run. Because they run a lot of lead zone, either out of I formation or motioning one of the tight ends over from an A set, with those guys to either end of the line initially, they get defenses to overload the strong side a lot of times, and that's when they can hit inside the other way, just like here against the Cardinals in week 17. So now they have those 2 tight ends to the right, and they send the slot receiver that way on a jet motion in order to force a couple of defenders to wait a beat, whilst they run inside zone to the left for 13 yards. As we get to the end zone view here, you'll see how it affects those guys on the second level, with how much they're trying to secure and get around the corner. So check out now how number 47 overruns this play here, as the center and left guard ride this free technique out of the way, which Tyler Gia cuts behind for this massive play once again. Which brings us to a second point here, growth at quarterback and the expansion of the pass game. Looking at what that Falcons aerial attack looked like in 2022, Marcus Mariota alone finished behind only Jalen Hurts with 90 pass attempts of RPOs, according to Pro Football Reference, while rookie Desmond Ridder added another 30 across his 4 starts over the last month for the season. And considering how run-centric the Falcons were, the rate of pass attempts on RPOs, in comparison to the total, actually beat out the Eagles at a massive 28.9%. Here's an example from week 13 against the Steelers. A very simple RPO concept from a 2x2 set with a couple of tight ends at the top of the screen and twins at the bottom, where other than the right tackle staying home on his backside edge defender, the other 6 bodies in tight make this look like wide zone yet again, And as long as this weak side linebacker just takes one shuffle step, which otherwise it would be a gift to the back, Mariota can key this conflict defender in the flats and Terrell Edmonds. And as he widens, now it's an easy decision on the double slant concept to hit London from the slot for a quick 13 yards. And going back to the first Panthers game, this is also a designated one-on-one route of play action, but nobody else in the league does this. Atlanta is in 14 personnel, so 4 tight ends, 1 running back, no receivers, with Pitts split out wide. At the bottom he has the single. They bring a little motion across and run this sort of split zone action to bind the 9-man box here, with a flat corner combination at the top, but it's really all about this delayed glance route at the bottom with Pitts. And against the corner, he's just unguardable on those. That's a quick 10 yards with the opportunity for more if you have a less decisive safety coming down from depth. They actually run almost the same thing later on from under center, where the safety keys on it immediately and tries to decapitate Pitts, but it's actually the defender staying down whilst Pitts is signaling for the first down, speaking again to what a ridiculous athlete that guy is. Once again from the Pittsburgh game, here they are in 22 personnel with a tight end to either side. Cordell Patterson is the tipman of this bunch, and Drake London is the offset receiver. And again show the split zone action with a very clean pocket for Marcus Mariota to wait out this curl and speed out combination by the 2 wide receivers. Whereas we let this thing run a little bit here, those guys are right where they need to be in terms of the landmarks, to where this sort of overhang defender in Trey Edmonds can't really help out against either route, and Mariota could have really gone either way here, as he hits London at the sideline for 12 yards, easy completion, keep the offense moving. Transitioning to the ways they were able to attack down the field off play action, here against the Browns from week 4, we've got a 2 route combination with a big post at the top and a deep over coming from the other side off inside zone flow action out of this ace duo set with 2 tight ends to the left. But Mariota doesn't actually have to boot the other way, with the backside tight end riding the defensive end along, where Olamide Zaccheaus finds himself all by himself at the sideline towards the side the original fake to run towards, despite this only being a 2-man concept, where just the threat of the run game is enough to hold the second level from gaining depth and drifting underneath that crosser. Of course, they do move the quarterback quite a bit on bootlegs and designed rollouts. Here's an example from the Bears game. The Falcons are in 12 personnel, with one of the tight ends split out as the flanker to the left, motioning him inside into this ace duo set, and they fake wide zone that way, whilst creating a free level look on the bootleg for the quarterback, with the tight end releasing against the flow of the initial run fake on a drag route, the receiver that way working behind him on the over, and Drake London as the single receiver running a deep out. As you can see, Mariota fakes the run and boots to the right, and he hits Ferksa in the flats, who rumbles ahead for an easy 17 yards. While Atlanta does work a lot of RPOs and play action concepts, Arthur Smith and Dave Ragone don't get enough credit for the opportunities that they create in a typical dropback game. Here's an example from the game in Seattle that we started the video with. 21 personnel, I formation to the strong side now, where we have a delayed release by the tight end on a drag route, and the fullback on an angle coming in behind him, but really the action is going on over on the left side, where they run this variation of a deep smash concept out of a wide receiver stack basically, and tailback on a little swing route that way as well. We can't quite tell if this is quarter half or straight cover 2, but what this concept does is create a free level threat to the defense, where the weak side safety is responsible for the deep half. And because the underneath coverage has to float towards that curl route, and the corner out for the flats can't blindly bail deep here because he has the running backs out here on that swing route, now there's a ton of space for the 7 route out to the sideline, and really the quarterback could also hit the tight end working across the field here for an easy 7 or 8 yards. Hits him at the sideline, and you get an easy 17 yards. And now hopping all the way to week 15 at New Orleans, which was actually the rookie debut of Desmond Ridder, which we'll get to in a minute. Here is them spreading the field out a lot more, as they're in an empty set from 11 personnel, with Drake London as the slot receiver to this twin side into the boundary, which is where they love to put him, and he's the primary read here if Ridder likes the look, with a clear up by the flexed up back, and the sort of levels concept towards the field. The Saints show this 5-man surface, and bail out the weak side linebacker towards the field, with the field side safety dropping down as a robber, as they run some variation of cover 1. To me this looks like a very simple read on the quarterback, created by the coaching staff, where if one of the linebackers drops out, the quarterback just reads which way he opens and hits the inbreaker the opposite way. And if you get both dropping out, now you tie low that guy towards the field with the levels concept. Ridder decides to work London versus Tyrann Mathieu here at the bottom of the screen on a slant route. Easy completion on 3rd and medium, and you keep the chains moving. That leads us into that transition on the center from Mariota to Ridder, and some of the reasons why I believe they should have probably moved on even earlier than just a month left in the season. So let's just look at 4 plays here from Mariota to encapsulate the issues with this game. We start in week 3 at Seattle, where the issue is pretty simple, understanding where to place the ball for your guys to make something happen. The Falcons on a 3-by-1 set and have Kyle Pitts at X, where he's isolated with the corner, as the Seahawks bring down that weak side safety, and they're going to be running cover 3. So really it's those 2 guys isolated down the sideline. And Pitts realizes early how badly the corner wants to play top down here, worrying about getting beat over the top, so he gets ready for a back shoulder placement, but for whatever reason Mariota puts it out in front with a ton of air underneath it, and it's a missed opportunity. The next week at home versus the Browns, it's all about failing to cash in the big plays, but on this one there isn't really anything to consider here, and there's actually a ton of room for error. Atlanta's in 12 personnel and motion is offside tight end out of his stack at the bottom, giving him a running start into this Mills concept where they have those 2 dig routes working across the field and a skinny post route by the single receiver in a reduced split. With the Browns staying in the split safety look that they show pre-snap, really it's all about keying this field side safety, and when we let this run now you'll be able to tell. Both guys are aggressively driving forwards in this quarter's coverage, so with the deep coverage drawn up, now you have the Mia Bird isolated against this corner. And as long as you place it anywhere between the hashes, all the way out towards the back pylon on the opposite side of the field, with some air under it, that's probably a touchdown. However, Mariota instead leads his receiver up the field, as if there was a safety in the middle that he needed to avoid, and Bird has to actually try to track it over the opposite shoulder, when there were like 3/4 of the field available to them. Okay, so not much success pushing it down the field so far. Let's look at how he did going over the middle. This play is from week 13 against the Steelers. Now Atlanta is in an offside I formation from pistol with a tight wide receiver stack to that side. Just like they've done on several occasions, and even on the same series, they make it look like split zone with the fullback coming across his alignment and in position to pick up anybody coming from the backside in order to create space between the 2nd and 3rd level with the run fake, as they cross-release those 2 stacked up receivers for another Mills concept. The Steelers bail out into this invert cover 2 here, where the corner bails deep and the down safety works out into the flats. It doesn't really matter though, because as long as those linebackers don't fly back underneath those routes, the corner's playing deep and outside, and only Minkah Fitzpatrick as the backside safety could make an impact on this play. For NFL standards, this window for the outside dig is pretty massive, and as you can see, Mariota has a perfect pocket. An NFL quarterback cannot miss this throw, but Mariota badly overshoots Kaderil Hodge. And let's finish up with this play from that Week 8 Panthers game. I'm sorry Marcus, but you were just blind on this one. Another really cool play design, where based on the threat of the run game, the defense has to respect even this light ball fake towards the inline tight end, while you have a free wide receiver set if you count Pitts as such at the top of the screen. This doesn't even have to be a very convincing fake here to get the Falcons into this full line slide basically, and all 3 routes are towards the left side, where they basically cross-release their guys, with Drake London on this inside or button curl, Olamide Zaccheaus on a wheel route, and Pitts on his quick outbreaker. The Panthers are in a simple 3-deep coverage, but check out how this messes with their spacing, as that field side corner Dante Jackson squeezes inside with London. The flat defender has to stay on Pitts breaking out towards the sideline, and now Zaccheaus is running scot-free down the sideline, where the deep middle safety is the only guy that could even come close here to have any chance of stopping this touchdown. And as you can see, this is a pretty clean pocket. No idea what Mariota is doing here, as he runs himself into a deep sack, and now after a nice punt return, you set up your opponents in field goal range already. In contrast to that, check out how much then rookie Desmond Ridder trusts his coaches and the play here in week 17 against the Cardinals. The Falcons are in a condensed 2x2 set from 12 personnel and motion at offset tight ends into the protection as if they fake split zone towards where he came from, with a deep post route and an over. And check out Ridder here. Turns his back to the defense, just confirms that safety isn't blindly flying down on something over the middle, or that somebody clouds that window between the hashes. Ball out immediately, and an easy 10 yards to Drake London. Of course, those were just a couple of examples on Mariota, and it did create some nice plays, while the rookie definitely had his struggles, especially in his debut at New Orleans in Week 15. Rookie cornerback Alontae Taylor should have had up to 3 interceptions and a touchdown from him, which I'll just show you a couple of plays here. First lesson for the rookie quarterback: the speed and the awareness of NFL defenders is just a lot better, and he gets away with a drop pick 6 here, thinking his man has a leverage advantage against the trailing DB in man coverage at the goal line. He is just way late trying to hit his receiver, but he booted him out to the right, and he could hit his tight end on a delayed drag route, but instead he tries to fit the ball into Drake London at the sideline, which the corner undercuts, but thankfully can't quite get that second foot down. And this is on 4th and 10 from the Baltimore game, where they come out in 11 personnel, with the back and tight end split to either side of the quarterback. They motion that slot receiver across from the bottom. As they've done so many times now, show that split zone action in the backfield. Tyler Algier actually does a great job here of still getting a piece of that outside rusher coming free, and allowing Ridder to let this ball fly down the field. But as we let this run, the pass actually lands at least 3 yards short and inside, leading to a turnover on downs. So it's understandable why the coaches were clearly protecting him from himself early on, but you definitely saw growth as he started getting more comfortable in this offense. A couple of examples from late the following week against the Cardinals. It's 1st and 10 and Atlanta is up by a point with just under 5 minutes left. They've got an A set with a wing towards the twin side at the top here. Yet again, fake split zone here, but they stay inside the pocket for this 2-man downfield concept basically, with just 2 streak routes. Whereas Isaiah Simmons here, as he steps down a little bit, there's a chance to let this ball fly for Drake London from the slot, who has a window here that you could hit. But instead of how Mariota approached this at times and just threw it up there, the rookie understands that this is 1st and 10 and there's no need to force something with the game in his hands. So instead he stays calm at the top of his drop and just takes advantage of all this space underneath, flips it out to his back, and he gets you to 2nd and 3, and now you can run some more time. And this is what really comforts you as part of this Falcons coaching staff, for this to become your franchise quarterback, who can deliver when needed most. It's 3rd and 9 coming off the 2-minute warning, after you just had a run stuffed. There are trips left, and the Cardinals bring down that boundary safety here late, to muddy up this curl route to Drake London, since they're expecting them to want to hit the single receiver here, with the defense overall being in cover 3. So this is all about what some people would refer to as a variation of Salem, with a couple of hitches at the marker and a dig by the number 2. The conflict defender here is Isaiah Simmons, who could make the quarterback hesitant by midpointing those 2 routes as basically an overhang defender. However, Ridder sees that guy widen with his shoulders turned out towards the sideline, and right as that back foot hits, he fires it to the number 3 Michael Pruitt, before that linebacker from the other side can close that window down. Big conversion, and Atlanta can run out the rest of the clock. And 3 more plays from the season finale against the Bucs. Here Atlanta is in a slightly condensed 2x2 set from 11 personnel with double seams inside, a stop and an out route on the respective sidelines, which the Bucs bring this down safety capped over the slot receiver on a blitz off the edge, while the defensive end the other way peels off to drop into this variation of invert cover 2, where the boundary corner now has to bail into a deep half. But what this does is force the single high safety now to widen into a deep half as well, where he's expecting Ridder to want to hit London again down the field here. But instead the rookie quarterback makes sure where his shoulders are committed and keeps his body lined up that way before throwing a strike to his tight end almost right at the opposite hash, before the corner can squeeze down on him for a 29-yard gain. Later on, they're in 3rd and 6. This is 11 personnel, and they motion into a double set with a fade zig or pivot combination at the top, and in cuts at different depths coming the other way. But because those corners have been too aggressive with sitting there at a certain depth, there's now a chance to hit London down the sideline as he kicks into a second gear here. With the rush closing in on Ridder, he slides up that way and releases with both feet off the ground. And while it could still be slightly further down the field, he gives this guy a chance to make a play for this 40-yard completion. And finally, this is on 4th and 3. The Falcons come out in empty trips left, with the running back flexed out wide to the right. And let's not focus on the pass concept here, because the Bucs have it pretty well covered, and unless Ridder sees it and is able to hit the 2 widest throws here at the right moment on either sideline, this isn't going to be a pitch and catch simply. But instead, I want you to check out what Ridder does here in creation mode, allowing a secondary play to develop, and getting back into a throw-ready position as he works back down to the line of scrimmage before hitting Anthony Ferguson for 11 yards and a key conversion. Ridder is certainly not perfect yet, and if you want even deeper analysis on a quarterback coming into year 2, you can check out my written piece on the young breakout candidates across the league for 2023 over at hellosforfootballtalk.com. But coverage recognition and getting to the right answers, understanding for ball placement in accordance to where the next closest defender is, and the elusiveness to make off-schedule plays as a passer are all encouraging to me. Which brings us to a third and final point, alignment-agnostic personnel, or you can also just call it flexibility among the skill position group. Looking at skill position guys who actually played for them extensively last season, alignment Zacchaeus is by far the biggest loss. Depending on your source, he either dropped 1 or none of his 41 catchable targets, was regularly used as the horizontal element of the pass game, and gave him solid production after the catch. The mere bird actually stood out to me on a few occasions, getting a step on his man down the field last season, but since the quarterbacks couldn't really cash in on them anyway, and Ridder in particular is still trying to find the right trajectory on deep balls outside the numbers, his loss may not be as impactful. And then the tight end duo of Anthony Ferguson and Michael Pruitt as the guys they would regularly have on the backside of zone runs, and had them working across the field of play action with pretty reliable hands. But they do bring back Parker Hesse, who actually played over 61% of snaps last year and did a lot of the dirty work as their best blocker probably. And in terms of the additions, Mac Hollins is another big body target at 6'4", 220 pounds with a lot of speed, coming off his best season as a pro in Las Vegas, where he showed more than just being a special teams ace and somebody who can take vertical shots to and be a ball winner down the field for you. Scotty Miller is sort of the replacement for Zacchaeus, as a less consistent option maybe, but somebody who presents more of a vertical component as well. He's never been a high snap guy, but we saw it during the Bucs Super Bowl season that he can come in and deliver some splash plays. Jonnu Smith reunites with Alpha Smith after spending time together in Tennessee, where he was a yak monster and got a big contract by the Patriots out of it, even though they didn't ever figure out how to properly use the dynamic tight end. I feel pretty confident that this coaching staff understands how to put the ball in his hands a few times with space to work, and how it can affect the offense otherwise. And then of course by far the biggest, 8th overall pick Bijan Robinson, as a generational running back prospect coming out of Texas, who will handle the majority of touches for a team that had a staple of runners toting the rock, but now you add a truly dynamic player there, who I believe can excel in any type of run concept, set the PFF single season record with 104 missed tackles forced this past year, and can be a legitimate 5th eligible receiver in the pattern, capable of creating big plays as a pass catcher out of the backfield, but also running more than just a couple of routes if you flex him out. In terms of personal tendencies, unfortunately I couldn't find any updated percentages on exact packages this year, but doing my own calculations, Atlanta had multiple tight ends and their running backs on the field at the same time on about 65% of offensive snaps, which is probably a better look at this anyway, since Kyle Pitts and Cordarrelle Patterson are legitimately used as wide receivers for certain stretches. Looking back at 2021, they finished in the top 4 in 12, 13, 21 and 22 personnel league-wide. 2021 top 5 pick Kyle Pitts embodies the flexibility as somebody who can play in line, and even though he's not a plus blocker there, his speed up the seams obviously challenges how defenses can structure the coverages. But he spent nearly twice as many snaps detached from the line so far, and was the de facto X receiver in 2021. And I get that the vibe on him right now is that he's not lived up to the hype, because the fantasy community was horny for him last year, and then he got disappointed due to several factors that had nothing to do with him personally, including his average depth of targets going up by full 3 yards to nearly 14 per, with a quarterback who couldn't consistently hit him in that area of the field. And people forget that Pitts became just the second tight end in NFL history, along with Mike Ditka, to hit 1,000 receiving yards as a rookie. This guy is 6'6", with a 97th percentile wingspan among tight ends, and runs a 4.44. Like, he can legitimately run by corners, make safeties look slow with how the dynamic he is going through his breaks, and then he can post up down the field for big time catches through contact. Watch what happens if you do give him chances to win back shoulder balls, like on his wheel routes out of a full house set against the Seahawks. Here's the first play from that game. The Falcons had an ace wing set from 13 personnel, with Kyle Pitts at the top of the screen. They motion the other tight end to his side across, once again making it look as if they are running some type of lead zone or toss concept. Yet instead, after faking the lead play that way, they pull the center out to the opposite edge in order to give Mariota time to set up here, as that motion man releases down the sideline, and the only wide receiver on the field at the bottom of the screen, Drake London, stands slightly inside of that. What this leads to, and I can't say 100% that this is supposed to be cover 3 with the field side safety right in the middle of the field, but either way, he squats on something that isn't there, whilst Pitts runs right by him, with the corner desperately trying to catch up in trail coverage. But Mariota overthrows the 6-6 target. And then moving on to the first matchup with Carolina, now on 3rd and 7, the Falcons come out in the 2x2 set, with Pitts in the slot at the bottom of the screen, and they bring him in an orbit motion towards the field, where he ends up getting lost in the flats underneath this Mills concept at the top with a backside call route. This is actually a good job by Mariota of sliding up, as the right tackle Caleb McGarry is a little late to get into his vertical set, with the O-line sorting out the simulated pressure, with 7 guys up at the line, but ultimately only bringing 5. And now the Panthers in the 3-deep coverage, where this basically looks like man, and the next closest defender to Pitts out there is going to be Shaq Thompson, bailing out into a hook zone. Where he's more worried about the people coming in behind him, Mariota flips it out there to his dynamic big guy, and now you see those unicorn-like movement skills, where he actually crosses up dudes in the open field for a chunk play. We've seen Drake London make some contested catches earlier already, just like here on his back shoulder fade as the single X for 20 yards against the 49ers, showing off those box out skills he learned as a former basketball player at USC. Watch him get the corner flipped out to the sideline here with a nice trigger step to sell the takeoff before snapping off this curl route, which unfortunately gets sailed by the quarterback. And this is really cool because by definition the Falcons are in 22 personnel here, with a running back, a fullback, 2 tight ends, and Drake London as the only receiver on the field at the slot to the left. The defense is actually nickel personnel, but when they bring this weak side back on a blitz, that's an easy completion to London on this hot read glance, and he actually spins off contact for the 14-yard score here. Of course, we have to talk about Bijan at this point, my number 2 overall prospect this past April, and somebody I believe could take this run game and the offense altogether to the next level. Here's a play from the 2021 Oklahoma State game, where the Longhorns are in a 2x2 set from 11 personnel with a tight end to the left, and they bring the Z receiver on an orbit motion across while running outside zone towards his original alignment. Bijan has a nice crease here and runs right around the safety for a 38-yard touchdown. Nothing crazy at first glance, but I want you to check out how efficient he is with his movements. So Bijan aims at the outside tip of the tight end, the O-line does a great job here of getting everybody pinned inside, and the tight end widens that C gap, which Bijan takes full advantage of by bending up the field in one step, plus then he takes one more plant and opens his hips the other way as he crosses up the safety in this one-on-one situation, displaying tremendous curvilinear movement as he's not slowing down at all. Here against Alabama now last season, Texas puts all 4 eligibles to the right side with a tight bunch that way, plus a wideout, and they're running split zone towards that side in 12 personnel, where the wing sifts across to take care of the backside edge defender. Let's watch this run now, and Bijan hits it to the front side because it's wide open for him. We'll get to the end zone view here in a second so you can really see what's going on. Bijan doesn't pause at all as he sees that frontside edge be secured, and once again, it's that efficiency slightly adjusting his path, slipping out of the arms of a couple of would-be tacklers, and then he lowers the shoulder at the end of it as he's about to step out of bounds. Here are 3 clips from the Baylor game, which I shared a couple of months ago in the lead up to the draft, because I believe they showcase Bijan's short area agility, navigating those tight quarters, and creating more than what's there. In particular on this first one, this would be a tackle for loss on most backs. The Longhorns are running split zone to the left yet again, this time with an offset tight end or wing to that side, against what's a typical 3-down line with a stand-up outside linebacker over to the tight end, and 2 guys off the ball in stack alignments over the guards ultimately. The defense does a great job flowing horizontally and taking away the front side, forcing Bijan to cut this back behind the right tackle, but the linebacker to that side stays patient and is right there for him. However, that's where this kid is just special and can create something out of nothing. He almost deadlegs this here off a slight jump cut, and is able to slide underneath the defender in order to still gain about 5 yards. The other 2 clips here are duo runs, where his blocking is much more vertical, and the great backs can dictate to the defense where he wants them to go with his body language and suddenness in condensed space. Again, we've got this tight bunch from 12 personnel to the left, and here the only actual double team is on the backside defensive end, while the 2-eye and 3 technique in this underfront inside are soloed up, and the center directly climbs up to the mic. Siaki Ika here does a great job of using the momentum of the left guard against him and tosses him further than he'd like to go, forcing Bijan to adjust his path. However, he's able to go from straight north to opening his hips in order to be able to reduce that near shoulder and get skinny through the crease, jump cuts behind his center, and then spins off the safety for hard-earned 14 yards. And this is basically the same run, only this time he legitimately makes that shade nose and Ika miss in the backfield. Would break his ankles if the defender was even able to fathom quickly enough what's going on here. Yet then he can get vertical straight away again, deadleg to avoid the straight shot at him, and drags bodies forward for another 13 yards or so. And then 2 quick examples of him as a receiver. Here against Alabama, it's a simple post-wheel combination with the single receiver at the top, quickly blows by that overhang of flat defender, looks back and effortlessly adjusts to the ball being placed to the back shoulder, not even breaking stride, and actually uses that momentum of the ball to turn him back up the field. You can really see it here from the end zone view, how easy he makes all of this look, in order to rip off a chunk play here yet again. And then from the Iowa State game, here he split out into the slot at the bottom of the screen and runs a seam route, which basically looks like a skinny post, against what appears to be, at least to his side, quarters coverage. The quarterback lets him hang out to dry, forcing a star running back to elevate for the ball here, which allows the safety to flip around and deliver a massive shot to his ribs, but Bijan somehow holds onto the ball. Watch it again with a closer look here, being able to hold onto this ball despite the massive hit. That's rare for a running back. Highly impressive player who can excel in a more horizontal or vertical rushing approach, catches the ball very naturally. You have to legitimately respect him when he's flexed out, and then when the ball's in his hands, not really anybody is getting him to the ground one-on-one. Let's end this video now by looking at the new veterans they've brought in. Mac Hans is the one I believe will see the field the most, because he'll be the most useful to what you want to do offensively. Here he's getting on top of the corner, showcasing a surprising second gear and exceptional ball tracking on the go ball. On this play, he's the number 2 in his trip set, and catches a seam route for a touchdown between 2 DBs converging on him in the end zone, somehow holding onto this ball. Look at the way he can snap off this curl route for being 6'4". In order to convert this 4th and 10 against the Patriots last season, very impressive for such a big wideout. You can flip the ball to him, like the Raiders did here on this reverse against the Rams, to take advantage of that speed that he has, if you just give him a little bit of a seam. But he can also execute those crack blocks to pin the defensive end inside when you want to run toss that way, which you typically see from Drake London in those reduced splits, like I showed earlier on the clip. Or helps bring the ball carrier loose by covering up the safety, like it does in this play against the Chargers, for a walk-in touchdown. Scotty Miller, I believe, will certainly be a lesser volume type of player, but he can give you this, running by a corner, trying to play top down, with his hips pointed at the quarterback in this zone coverage, as the receiver shows great focus to hold on the pass. It's easy to imagine Kyle Pitts and Drake London in front of him here on his bunch set like this, where those big bodies can create rubs, or you just throw legit screen passes out to him in order to take advantage of that sudden acceleration that Scotty has. And he can be an element of a run game, as your fly sweep guy, or getting around the corner on those end rounds like this, where if Atlanta gets defenses to overcommit to the running back, this could quickly burn them. And finally, Jonnu Smith hasn't been a big playmaker these last 2 years in New England, but when Arthur Smith had him in Tennessee, he was doing stuff like this, where they set up run-off-the-catch opportunities for him, and he was pulling away from entire defenses, like on this touchdown from a couple of years ago. Surprising shifts from a condensed 13 personnel set into going empty, and setting up those sort of rub plays near the goal line for him, where he can shield the ball and score on slant routes like he does here. And while I didn't always showcase them with the Patriots, some of those skills are certainly still there, as we saw on display against the Browns last year, where he quickly turns around after blowing by the second level of play action, bounces off the safety as he spins it back upfield, and rumbles ahead for a huge play. The Falcons have running backs playing wide receivers playing tight ends playing wide receiver or fullback, cats acting like dogs. The opportunities are endless really. All while at the core, they want to punch you in the face with what Arthur Smith established in Tennessee as exotic smash-mouth football. Now they add a special talent, handling the ball as a rookie. If their quarterback can take a leap in year 2, this offense could be one of the toughest to prepare for on a weekly basis, and there'll be a lot more videos out there like this, talking about the stuff that they do. Thank you so much for watching. As you can probably tell, this video was a lot of work, clipping everything together and trying my best to show off what this offense was in 2022, where they could still get better, and why I believe they'll be tough to deal with for anybody this upcoming season. So if you could leave a like, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and just share this with a friend or two. Maybe you've got a Falcons fan or some football nerd like me among them. I'd really appreciate that. I've done a bunch of off-season content around the NFL draft, general roster construction, breakout candidates for 2023 and more. You can check all of that out at hellosofootballtalk.com. Link is down below in the description, along with my social media handles, if you want to follow along with everything I do and read some of my random thoughts around the NFL and college football. I'll be back here on YouTube in a couple of weeks. Not totally sure what I'll have in store yet, because I'm recording this a couple of weeks in advance, with all the editing still in front of me, and just structuring the rest of the summer, combining written and video content. But I'll keep you guys up to date, and can promise you I've got some cool stuff in the works. So until then, see you later. Peace!